welcome to the buyer persona education for September. So on this call, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to do buyer personas, what they mean, why we should have them, and kind of walking you through the process that I took this summer to create the ISEC US buyer personas. So let's get started. So first, before we can even answer this, what is a buyer persona, we need to understand this. 18 to 30 is a pretty big demographic to market to. In fact, it's actually 67 million people in the United States. And for us, we currently only reach about 500 people. So honestly, how do other companies reach that 67 million? Target marketing. This is the thing that maybe you've heard of before, but it's something that's really going to set ISEC US apart and how we're going to be able to reach more customers. And so what does target marketing even mean? Well, it's finding a need to fill, aka our product. Our need to fill is peace and fulfillment of humankind's potential, so we have these exchanges. Who is the customer that needs it? The youth, but we really don't know a lot about that customer. What's the message to get that customer to want it? We don't know enough about our customers to know what message to portray. And the last is, what channels do we use to reach those customers? What channels do our customers use? Which channels' messages do they actually listen to? So, if we do all of these things, that's target marketing. And the real definition is concentrating your marketing efforts on one or a few key buyer personas whose needs and desires most closely match your product or service offerings. Literally, in the definition of target marketing is buyer personas. So the definition of a buyer persona is a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on a market research and real data about your existing customers. First, I want to show you an example. We all know Taco Bell. So who is their buyer persona? One, they're probably male. 18 to 24, they stay up late, they like cheap food, they like a lot of food, they probably drink or smoke, they're low income, and they're in college or working. This is actually the real buyer persona of Taco Bell. They actually have a very specific buyer persona, and this buyer persona is who they target through all of their marketing. So if you can think of any Taco Bell ads, go through them and see exactly who they're going after. And you might be thinking, but a lot of people eat Taco Bell. Well, concentrating your marketing efforts on one or a few key personas does not prevent you from reaching customers outside of that target. It helps you reach the most people in one segment. Overall, that is reaching more customers. So please keep in mind that when we're doing target marketing and you're going after just one certain type of student, it doesn't mean you're not going to reach the rest of your campus. It just means that you're most likely to get that person, and your odds of getting them to approve and go abroad are much, much higher. And that's why we target market. We're using our energy in an efficient and effective way. So, how did we create the US buyer personas? What is the process? What are the steps? Well, there's 6 main steps to create them. 1, customer data gathering. So I went through and I opened up all of the data of our customers for the last 3 years, and I went through, who are these people? And the second thing I did was I made assumptions. So based off of that data, just the things I could see in our systems, I made assumptions on who our buyer personas were. From those assumptions, you make a list of questions, and you hold customer interviews or surveys. So this summer, I literally called people. I spent my time calling these customers with my list of questions and asking, like, what type of student are you? Why did you go abroad? What were the things that made you want to go to this country? And as I took in their answers, I consolidated those, and that's actually the next step. Bringing back together all of the things that I learned from these calls and putting it together and finding the commonalities. The last is validate and finalize the buyer persona. You're advertising, targeting those buyer personas, and seeing if those buyer personas actually interact with your new messages. And the last is implementing it. And that's what we're doing here today. Remember that buyer personas are a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data about your existing customers. First, I want to walk you through the template. First, it starts with, what product is this for? What's the target that we're going for? And what's the persona type? Then it's split into sections. This first type goes over their name, age, gender. Faculty is kind of like major, background, or like what field do they work in, hobbies, and any experience that they have. The second is more about who they are as a person. What are their objections? What are their behaviors? What are their pains and gains with going on this product? What do they value? What are their needs? What are their biggest fears? And what are their goals? And each of these things tells us something different. This section on the left shows us how to identify them. This is when you're at a table and you're talking to somebody and you're saying, okay, like what year in school are you? How old are you? Or you're asking questions like, what's your major? Or like, what are you interested in? This helps us quickly identify who we are talking to. Then we know if they fit inside this buyer persona. The other half tells us how to adapt our message to attract them. So if we know that when we identified this buyer persona that they also have objections that are typical around their parents' permission, then we might portray our message that really addresses that issue. So that's why we have both of these sides in a buyer persona. First, this is a GE one, targeting toward business admin, and it's called the entrepreneur. You can see on the left it has Brad, age 21 to 22, the gender, then it has their faculty, their background. And then on the right, it goes through all of their objections. So for example, this Brad here, his objections revolve around wage or the life costs in politics. These are the things that he doesn't really want to go on this exchange because he's worried about what he's going to be getting paid and that he has other bills to worry about. His behaviors are responsible, open-minded, multicultural, ambitious, entrepreneurial. So when we start to see these behaviors in somebody, we're like, this might be a Brad. And then we look at pains and gains that are typical with this type of buyer persona. So we walk in knowing that he's going to be worried about the fact that it's an unpaid internship, and we know how to fight that. And we walk in that we know his gains is work experience. So we're adapting our message toward work experience. So you can see that utilizing buyer personas is really important. It helps us know what to say to our customers and how to adapt our messages. And that makes our tabling and our class pitches and even our flyers much more targeted toward a certain person and helping us make a bigger impact in that one segment. So that's why you should use buyer personas. The main thing to understand is that you should be doing research as well in your own campus to understand what buyer personas exist on your campus and how do they align to the national ones. You want to align both so that way we can make sure we're all saying the same messages. And as you might notice is that in the September campaign, we're going toward two certain buyer personas, one for GE and one for GV. And the reason that we're doing that is so that way the message on the local level matches the message on the national level, and we're all targeting toward the same people to make the biggest impact in that segment, and we can get the most customers in that target. And overall, it's going to lead to more people going on exchange. And that's it.